Stupid monkey philosophy back again. Oh, see, when I do it like that, though, it seems like you guys can still see the sides of the screen. The overlay's not. Um, Maybe if I change the image layout. Anyway, we're going to finish what we started earlier. I did, it looked like I got like 30 minutes of solid recording there. I mean, a little glitch here and there on the earlier take of this. And then I got a little distracted. I got cut off during reading. So there's like a big gap at the end of that video before I realized I got kicked out of the room and shit. Luckily, GeoSam was there to help me out and let me know what was going on. Thanks again, Geo. So I did go back and check that out. It looks like the first part of the stream was pretty solid on the Wi-Fi over there. I don't know if it was just um, an anomalous occurrence at that time. Anomalous, because I usually have like a really strong Wi-Fi connection over there, and not so much over here. I guess we could take this down. Donate if you can, if you please. Yeah, I'm still smoking a little bit. I know. But they said give yourself time, wean off of it. I've got, I went from pack a day smoker to I'm doing about 5 cigarettes a day now, roughly, give or take. So that's progress. Okay, so we'll get back to the paper we were reading earlier. I do have that ready to go, but it's a book. I should clarify. I found out this is actually a book that was published in the late 70s, but apparently is still very well received and well read in the community. So we get the first chapter, which is a teaser. The rest of the book is available behind a paywall. Not just buying the book, but I mean like on the JSTOR and stuff, which I think, if I'm correct, is an academic platform where I can find, and I'm thinking about buying the subscription to this, so I should ask somebody intelligent. I can find like peer-reviewed papers and things like that too. There's a lot of good stuff up there. It keeps coming up, and it's all behind the paywall. You can only see the abstracts of things. So something I'm going to look into getting. But first, I found this conversation between T-Jump, and I'm not sure who this guy is, honestly. Apparently, he knew T-Jump before T-Jump was YouTube famous. So they have a little bit of a conversation about that I was watching earlier, and we're just going to skip through whatever the latter portion of that conversation is going on now and get to the raw philosophy, because I'm very interested. I've heard T-Jump speak a bit on morality, but this one's specifically one-to-one about objective morality. So we'll get into the video and talk about it a little bit, and then we'll go back to the paper and hopefully make quick work.
Christianity, because they think Jesus is this perfect moral being, but the Old Testament God not so much. But if they're the same, well then anything God does, Jesus does too.
After all these conversations, because you've had so many conversations about atheism and religion, would you say, like, have you changed your mind about this when you set out to do this? So you said about 3 years ago, or more the truth.
The same. I mean, I've improved my position, made it stronger since then, but nothing's really changed except maybe adopting a stronger view on morality. But essentially, my position has been the same. Just been improving my arguments, changing on some things, some philosophical concepts I hadn't heard before, and was taught them by philosophers I chatted with. So there have been some changes, but not anything substantial about my position.
So, you're do people read this book that you wrote, the model? Do you sell it?
No, it's not. I haven't found a publisher for it yet. I have a publisher for my morality book, but it's supposed to come out by the end of this year sometime. But I don't
Okay, it's talking about a different book. Okay,
because I didn't want to.
Well, this was a year ago.
Publisher,
yeah,
because it's taken more seriously in academia, which is the goal.
Yeah,
not just to publish it.
Wow, I mean, congratulations! I didn't know you had this book coming out sometime this year.
So they might actually have done put out the one on morality now.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
So are you really happy about that?
I guess. I mean, For me, it's just another thing to give me hope, but it's not really what matters to me in life. So it's sort of, but sort of not.
I guess it's nice to get some recognition, right?
Sure.
Well, just publishing alone doesn't get you recognition, but okay.
Imagine, man, and like last night I was watching you play Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So
The Assassin's
those
Creed
games.
games? No, I don't. Odyssey, it was so boring. Valhalla's pretty good. I do like Valhalla, but they're mostly just something. Ninja Gaiden. Assassin's Creed games are kind of just average.
Is that something you like? Just stream games and
Yeah, that's
you?
Discord guy. Yep, pretty much.
I'm guessing maybe
How's that going? I mean,
Tom has seemed a little frustrated in this entire exchange. I'm guessing maybe this guy paid for his time, but because he is answering the questions, but it looks like he's like, move on, dude. Just ask the fucking questions about morality, or don't. I don't know. Hopefully, he asks some questions about morality.
I mean, when I joined, I mean, it was really popular. I mean, there were lots of people.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I posted as the said, I really great.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was you. I didn't realize that was you. Yeah. Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I was
Oh, I didn't know there.
being a like in
The morality of
futuristic
being a
and
gamer.
Everything goes around taking 12 years ago.
Have you played those games? Cyber.
And played Cyberpunk. So I just put my games on a list and just.
You need to put a
whatever next
timestamp when the
one was.
conversation actually fucking begins. Nobody did. Somebody in the comments was like,
Played the first
dude,
two.
this is over
Watch
15
Dogs,
minutes
I
now.
think.
You haven't even gotten
Or
into
the
subject
first-
matter.
I think it is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So I kind of like those.
Oh,
I
dude.
feel a little bit limiting that it's a little bit limiting these days, even though they're good.
I mean, I enjoy
Yeah, I actually
banter as
kinda-
much as the
I
next
kinda
guy,
prefer
but
those games because they.
title does say philosophy 1-on-1.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a deeper level of refinement than the assessment. So to finish it, it's kind of a commitment.
Yeah, I guess so.
To me, I really like them, but they feel
Of a thing because I play the games that take like 300 hours to finish. I'm fine with those. Like
really.
Okay.
there are some
Well,
games
like,
that just.
we're
I
literally
don't
just
like the
gonna
grindy games. as
skip
much,
to
but
20
games
minutes,
that
and if
are
they don't start
skill-based
talking
and
about
take
philosophy,
a
we'll
long
go back
time,
to
I'm
the
totally
game
fine with
because
that. Like Ninja
this
Gaiden
is a little
is
ridiculous.
a super hard game because it takes a long time. Yes, yeah, I don't really
When you told me you moved
Still
care
to
talking
what
about-
Texas,
location.
yeah, when you told me you moved here from Texas, I didn't think it was okay. So you did grow up here, so you're probably used to it, right?
I guess so.
20 minutes in now, we've said nothing about objective morality. Skip to 30 minutes. Well, fuck it. We're already here, right? Wasted enough of my own time or something. Should have gone with the Godless Girl debate, but I kind of already know how that goes, and I'm not really into dumpster fires right now. I just wanted to hear some fucking philosophy, bro.
You would be held to if you had infinite power, essentially.
There we go.
And that's what we're really wanting to know when we're talking about objective morality, not just justified thing the doctor can do. Well, it's the doctor in the 1800s.
Somewhere in
get shot
between
the
there and
leg,
here, we started talking about
and
philosophy.
he's going to cut your leg. off.
25 minutes?
That's the best the
Let's
doctor
go.
can
Let's
do.
go to
If
25.
you imagine a doctor today doing this same thing, like that would clearly be immoral. He would like sue the doctor for cutting your leg off when he didn't have to. So if we just
Okay, yep,
keep-
you're a little deep now.
It's like some core tenets, like the 10 rules of objective, or are there? So do you think there are lots of things that are objective, or just like some core tenets, like the 10 rules of Tom Jump, for morality, something like that, or is it something like pretty
Yeah.
extensive?
Yeah, I think it's the objective principle that describes what morality is that any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. That's what I think the objective standard is.
Any involuntary imposition of will is immoral, which implies that each being has their own will, Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So that's like the core rule.
Yep.
Can you repeat it? Involuntary
Any
imposition.
any involuntary imposition of will is immoral.
So any one being who imposes their will upon another being who is non-consenting would be an act of immorality. Okay. But that doesn't account for beings that don't deal in consent. Like you could impose your will upon a tree. The act in of itself could be immoral. You can't necessarily quantify or measure the harm you're doing, but we know that deforestation causes harm overall to other beings who are also non-consenting, right? But they have no knowledge of what you're doing to that tree, right? We don't have a first-hand knowledge. Okay, but I'm not here to debate this. Let's just listen through the argument and go.
Okay. So basically, you can't force people to do stuff that they don't want to do.
Pretty much.
But you can force your, non-human animals, right? Your pets. You can force them to do things. Is that immoral? I don't know. Now, if we're talking specifically to humans, okay. But I don't think this grounds an objective morality, or what you call universal morality.
Is that a good simplification?
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, in the philosophy club, someone brought up the issue of vaccines today, actually. And some people suggested that we should impose that, or we should demand that some people are vaccinated, regardless of what they want to do. So, in your opinion, that would be immoral because you're imposing your will on someone who doesn't want to do something that you want them to do.
It's an interesting take. Well, we do in some ways impose it. We impose it by exclusion. We don't say that you have to get vaccinated, but we say if you don't get vaccinated, you can't participate in these activities or attend gatherings at these particular places, right? So we do it by exclusion rather than by forcing or the imposing of the will, right? We say, well, if you don't eat all your dinner, you don't get to have the cake. It's like the vaccine thing.
Yep, it would be immoral. But in our society, some immoral things that we do are justified. Like putting people in prison is obviously an involuntary imposition of will, but we have to do it because if we don't, they're going to cause greater harm to other people. So we have to put them in prison against their will in order to prevent them from harming other people. So
that's an aspect of what we call the morality of society, societal morality. It's also situational ethics, right? Because the situation here arises where this person has committed an immoral act more than likely against another entity. We call them entities because you might be committing an immoral act against another person. You might be committing what the government would consider an immoral act against itself, right? Acts against government, acts against businesses or corporations, right? Those could be considered immoral. If you're inflicting damage to another person's property, you're not harming them, in the first person, but you are costing them essentially money, or you're taking from them, theft. You're taking from them what they earned for yourself without earning. Yeah, okay. But the imposition of will generally in an ideal society would come upon the person who's first committed the act of immorality.
in our world, which is not a perfect world, we have to do immoral things in order to protect a bunch of people's wills. We have to impose on a smaller number of people's wills. So we cause the least imposition of will possible, which is immoral, but it's the least immoral thing we can do given our limitations.
So it's almost like a utilitarian perspective in the sense that you're going to do something immoral. So you want to do something immoral to the least amount of people possible, kind of.
Yep. Yep. And but then the difference between my model and utilitarianism is that utilitarianism says that that thing that we do that's the least immoral is moral by definition, whereas I say no, it's still immoral. It's still wrong to do that. It's just the best we can do given our limitations.
I also think that utilitarianism implies generally, I don't know if there's a specific utilitarian morality, but as far as my understanding, broadly, utilitarianism would say that if something is best for the society then it is moral. But if you were to say, well, then the thing that's best for the society as a whole is to impose the will, right? It's like the war on drugs. We're just going to incarcerate everybody who doesn't adhere to what we think is best for society, right? Which would be a utilitarian thing. Well, then you just say, well, if they can't get clean, we should just execute them. We should just euthanize them, right? It's better for the society as a whole to not have a bunch of drug addicts running around, right? But that's not really the way your framework works. So I wonder if that's just a criticism on society or a criticism of the framework itself.
So that's the difference between my model and utilitarianism.
Well, interesting. Why do you think that's immoral still?
I think that you can,
If
like,
it's the best option, right? If it's the best option and it's the only thing that can be done correctly in that situation, like what do you mean by immoral in that case?
so we can say that if you were infinitely powerful, there's something you could do which would be more moral or less bad.
Okay, I don't know where Tom's going to go with this, but I think you could have simply answered that by saying, well, it depends on the situation. And you go into situational ethics, which is pretty simple. You can override the general moral principle by putting an ethical framework around the situation, right? And once again, that is, this person committed the immoral act. Therefore, in order to prevent them from committing more immoral acts, to hopefully reform them from their immorality, we will incarcerate them to prevent them from harming other members of society. It's only in the framework of the situation. That's why we don't have thought crimes, at least ideally, right? Potential crimes, things you might have done had we not figured you out first, right? There are some things like attempts to defraud the government. It means they didn't defraud the government. They tried, but they didn't get away with it, right?
And the reason you can't is just because of your subjective limitations. So obviously, the fact that you subjectively don't have the ability to do this greater moral thing doesn't mean that it's not objectively immoral. It just means subjectively that's the best you could do. So you subjectively don't have the ability to do this greater moral thing doesn't mean that it's not objectively immoral. It just means subjectively that's the best you could do. So for
no, wait, huh? That's not. You would say that's objectively moral, then, not objective morality, right? I think I'm seeing some holes in this. I don't know if it's just the way he's explaining it.
So if we're talking about an objective morality, we don't want to know what your subjective limitations are. We want to know what the objective standard is. And that objective standard can't just be your subjective limitations. There has to be something else there that's greater, something that can really measure.
Something that's universal? Because I believe the word you're searching for is universal. It's universally applicable to all or most humans, right?
What the true maximum is. That's what the objective part is. So it's like if you imagine a doctor in the 1800s, if you get shot in the leg, and he's going to cut your leg off, that's the best the doctor can do. But if you imagine a doctor today doing the same thing, like that would clearly be immoral. We would like sue the doctor for cutting your leg off when he didn't have to.
So you're talking about the subjective limitations of the moral actor, right? Which makes sense. Yeah. They can only do what they can do in their time and place. Now we have doctors who are better equipped, better skilled, better educated, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't tell us about the objective, right? The objective decision in the moment was, how am I going to save this person's life? Well, my only option right now to save this person's life is taking their leg. Okay, in the situation, that doesn't really jive objectively, right? If it doesn't hold true today, but it did hold true back then, that's not objective. That is subjective. So where's the objective morality of taking the leg, or immorality? Or does it not work that way? Does this situation require a nuanced conversation? So then the doctor's actions are neither objective nor subjective. Well, I guess you could say the situational aspect is somewhat subjective, but it's subjective to all the actors involved, not just the one who we're talking about right now, not just the doctor, right? It's also subjective. Like the person who's having their leg amputated would have had no other choice either. Right? They can't go get a second opinion. That's not an option.
So if we just keep giving more technological capability to the doctor, what is the justified thing the doctor can do? Well, it's essentially given the technology he has, what is the least imposition on your will that he can accomplish given his technology? That's the moral thing to do. It's obviously not the objectively moral thing to do, because the fact that he can only do that given his limitations doesn't mean it's the best that can be done in the universe. There's obviously another standard there. And if you want to know what the objective basis of morality is, you have to know what the final standard is. What is the standard that you would be held to if you had infinite power, essentially? And
okay, now that's interesting. If you had infinite power to do anything, right? The God standard, what would God do? What would God do? That must be objectively moral. But if you don't believe in gods with infinite powers, how do you define? You're losing me there. If you had the infinite power to do whatever, right, then everything could just be objectively moral. You would have no more immorality. What does that mean? There's no distinction between morality and immorality right now. Immorality doesn't even exist. We have no basis for talking about morality. I don't know. This seems to be more confusing than informing.
And that's what we're really wanting to know when we're talking about objective morality, not just our subjective morality of what we can do given our limitations. So you have to take our limitations out of the equation and know what would be possible if you had essentially infinite power.
So what we ought to do if we could do differently or something. I love T-Jump. And this was a year ago. I'm sure he's probably got a more refined argument for this right now. But in this video, I don't know.
So how did you find out that rule, that cornerstone of your morality system, that an involuntary imposition of will is basically the pinnacle of immorality, or the core of immorality? Like how did you come to that conclusion? Because that's not, I don't know. I don't. It's not such a widespread conclusion. I don't think people don't usually think of that as the original sin.
I also think when you talk about the involuntary position of will, you're also presuming that all of your moral actors in a scenario, in any given scenario, are able and willing to, like, let's say you have a person who is in distress. They are distraught. They are mentally unstable, right? They're emotionally unstable for some reason, and this person's trying to walk out into traffic. They want to die, right? You would be immoral not to involuntarily impose your will upon them and restrain them from walking out into traffic. That would be immoral, right? So that directly contradicts the whole statement right there. You could just make up that one scenario. So this is problematic for me.
Let's put it that way. Unless you're a libertarian.
Yeah. So what I did was I looked at moral progress. So if you look over time, there's a pattern in how morals change over time. Like as you gain more resources, you think it's immoral, you give women rights, voting rights, LGBT rights. There's all these kinds of rights that are given and are added to society as society moves forward. And there's a pattern that's present in this moral progress. If you can understand what that pattern is and describe it with some principle, that principle would be your theory of what objective morality is. And that's where I get my model, is I think that the pattern can be described in the principle, in any involuntary imposition of will as immoral. I think that principle describes the pattern in moral progress that gives us a way to predict what the pattern is going to be if we take it to its extreme.
Okay. So all of that follows the pattern that goes back to that core, of involuntary imposition of will.
Yep.
How is that so exactly?
Let me give this a few more minutes,
how
and then
would
we'll
that
come back to it, because there's going
describe all of those things that you mentioned?
to be another study soon.
Did you mention feminism and racism? And
Yeah, women's rights, LGBT rights, voting rights. So as we gain more resources, we give people more freedoms to cause less involuntary imposition on their will. So all
That's not necessarily the way it worked, though. You're equating that to resources. I don't think resources was the primary issue there. I mean, you could argue that, but the resources came available in large part because people had more rights. I believe we could say that women you had when women got voting rights and equal employment, which is arguable whether or not they really have equal employment, right? But some access, some foot in the door to the world of higher education and stuff like that, right? And you've got women who suddenly start working for NASA, and oh my gosh, they've done all these incredible things, right? That a man potentially could have done, but it would have taken a far greater number of men over a greater number of generations in order to account for that number of women doing the same work in the field and making the progress. So it's just sheer numbers. It has nothing to do with resources. I mean, you could call the numbers of people resources, but the fact that we weren't utilizing those numbers of people appropriately, right? Look at the slave trade, right? It's not just that it adversely or negatively impacted the slaves. It negatively impacted the whole economy, because you had a whole group of people who were producing, but not, they were producing, but they weren't contributing to the economy, right? Because their masters were deciding all of that stuff. Ultimately, their masters were the ones, I mean, you could say they were contributing to the economy, but not in a direct sense, right? Their resources were being allocated by that individual, or maybe group of individuals in certain instances. I think there were instances of that nature, right? But either way, their capital was being reappropriated by people who did not share their interests, right? Whereas if those people had shared a common interest, they would have been working together towards a common goal. Does that make sense? I feel like it made sense, but I didn't go quite where I meant to go at that point, but I feel like it should still make sense.
all of the progress and moral progress that we see is a result of a lessening of the involuntary imposition of wills based on the amount of resources that we have.
I would actually, no, again, contradiction. It was the involuntary position of will that created the, shall we say, lack of progress, right? That was the involuntary position of will. Once we removed that involuntary position of will, right, from those oppressed people, we'll call them oppressed, then they had the freedom to more productively contribute to the society. It's not to say that they didn't have the potentiality to do so beforehand, right? That's kind of what you're implying, I think, when you say, well, just because, let me go back and make sure I'm not mishearing that, because that's what I heard right there.
involuntary imposition on their will. So all of the progress and moral progress that we see is a result of a lessening of the involuntary imposition of wills based on the amount of resources that we have.
Based on the amount of resources that we have. And once again, no, I mean, I can see the argument there. I slightly misread that, but once again, it's not the amount of resources, right? The amount of resources actually I'm searching for like a really simple word that's slipping my tongue. We got more resources, right? We increased, there we go. We increased our resources by reducing the involuntary imposition of will, right? Where the will was actually, that involuntary position was merely preventative. It was preventing those people from doing what they might otherwise have done, right? Oppressive will. That's one type of will. On the other hand, they forced those people through an involuntary position of will to exploit another thing, right, that wasn't working, whatever it was. You had plantation owners, you had the cotton trade and tobacco, which seemed to still be doing quite well. So it's not to say that those industries didn't have their place in the economy. It was the way they were doing it that was inefficient, right? But what I mean to say is that we were able to increase the resources after the involuntary position of will was lessened, not the other way around. And T-Jump is framing it as if because we had more resources, then it's like, no, the Industrial Revolution, bro. I mean, we still, I don't know what else to say. Industrial Revolution. That's my argument.
Okay. Maybe we would have a different perspective though if we were talking about this maybe in the 20th century instead of the 21st century, because the 20th century, you know, stuff like the
That's a good, yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying.
Governments, they really emerged in the 20th century, and they were essentially the antithesis of your idea of we cannot impose our will on others, right? Because people were, the state pretty much impressed a lot of things on people that they didn't necessarily agree to. So and the 20th, and that was, it seemed at.
What are you saying? What are you saying? Are you saying they impressed, the state impressed things upon people that they didn't necessarily agree to? That's a fully loaded statement. And we're talking about the 20th century, not the 21st century. So you're talking about legislation of yesteryear? Is that what you mean to say? I mean, I don't know. It's a weird way to frame this argument, but all right, let's hear it out.
At the time, the culmination of human history on those places and from those perspectives, right? Communism and fascism.
Communism and fascism. We were talking about what, feminism, slavery. I don't remember the other one T-Jump reference there, but women's rights, the rights for people of color, gays, right? And now you're talking about communism, fascism. Okay, maybe this ties in somewhere.
So from those perspectives, that would definitely clash with your morality. So would you say they were just wrong? They were just misguided in those places?
Yeah. So the idea of objective morality is it's what's true given the best of all possible worlds. So if we have infinite knowledge, this is what people are going to come to about knowledge.
Okay, true statement, right? In all possible worlds, given an infinite amount of typewriters, the monkeys will eventually come up with objective morality, right? And his interlocutor, whoever this guy's name is, I never caught this guy's name, and I feel bad. I don't know this. Is it somewhere in here? No, it's probably not. Tom's not good with shit like that. Who the fuck is this guy? And what was the question he just asked? And how is it not really relevant to the conversation? Well, yeah, Tom just answered it by trying to bring it back on the rails. We'll give this, God, it's 12:11. We'll give this about 10 more minutes. I'll give us about 10 more minutes for now, and then we can come back to the end later. I guess we're going to go watch the old Godless Girl debate too and see if there's anything fruitful there. Because it gives me talking points. It makes my brain start working, and then once we read a proper paper, we'll parse it all out. Ooh, tongue twister.
What the moral thing to do is. Obviously, the Soviet Union and Hitler didn't have access to very much knowledge, so clearly their model of morality is going to be wrong. If there is
they had access to a lot of knowledge. You're just saying it was incorrect knowledge, right? They did have intelligence. They had theories behind all of their behavior and their prescriptions, right? But one of them was eugenics. I think both Stalin and Hitler were proponents for eugenics, and many of their advisors were. And at the time, we didn't know enough about eugenics, we didn't know enough about genetics proper to disprove eugenics at that point. It was a lot of theoretical hyperbole, right? So we could just say that everybody involved really didn't have enough information at the time to make an informed opinion about that, but certain people acted on it nonetheless, and they were wrong. Okay, cool.
There's an objective morality. They definitely didn't get it right. They don't. It's like saying that.
But going back to your analogy with the doctor, all you're saying is that Hitler and Stalin did the best they could at the time with the knowledge that they had available to them, right? That's the same statement.
Some Pluto or whatever got absolute quantum physics right. Like clearly he didn't have access to enough knowledge to really get a grasp on what the objective morality would be. They were just kind of making it up as they go along. So yeah, they would just be wrong essentially. And I don't think there's any controversy in that. Most of the people who think that there is an objective morality think that Hitler was wrong about what he thought it was.
Well, but we're also talking. I'm not defending Hitler here by any stretch of the imagination, and it's not just Hitler. I mean, Hitler was one case, right? I mean, there was a number of, Hitler, but then you also had communism. You also had all sorts of different.
That is a nonsense statement, sir. Hitler, and then you had communism? No, sir. Communism came first. Know your history. I don't know what the fuck you think you're talking about, dude. Like,
fascist regimes.
Hitler, what? Oh my goodness. Okay. This guy is really frustrating. Tom, get us back on course.
But all of them had in common.
Well, it's
and obviously I don't want to
like a scientific fact.
Yeah, I don't want to live under totalitarian regime. So in my opinion, yeah, I mean they certainly got stuff wrong.
Wait, Bruno, it's like any scientific
Bruno.
fact.
Okay.
Everyone.
Bruno from the philosophy group. We'll commit that to memory somewhere and destroy him in debate. No, I'm just joking. Maybe we'll have him on the show sometime. We'll talk about this shit.
In the past was wrong about science. Pluto was wrong about science. Newton was wrong about gravity. They were all wrong. Their scientific theories are wrong. They didn't have enough knowledge. So there's no difference in morality. If there's an objective morality, just like if there's an objective fact of gravity, everybody in the past was just didn't have the knowledge to get it right, which would make a lot of sense. Like it wouldn't make much.
So wait. Believing one is moral, being incorrect, is not the same as being immoral? I'm confused here.
Much scientific fact. Like everyone in the past was wrong about science. Pluto was wrong about science. Newton was wrong about gravity. They were all wrong. Their scientific theories are wrong. They didn't have.
But science isn't morality. We're talking about two different things, right? You can be wrong about science and not be immoral. Right? It makes no fucking difference. If you're a flat earther, you're not immoral, you're just dumb, right? I'm sorry. I apologize to flat earthers. You're probably not a stupid person. You're just very, very misguided and ill-informed. Stop watching YouTube videos right away and go back to school, right? But, okay. Okay, how do I word this? No. Comparing it to being wrong about science is not the same. Now, in a sense, you could say it. Descartes, right? Descartes. Is that how you pronounce it? It's Descartes, right? Is that how we say it? It's France. Enough of my terrible fake mock French accents. I thought I was supposed to be doing Larry the Cable Guy voice tonight. Um, you know what? Is that more Jeff Foxworthy? I don't know. One of those fucking guys. I can do a bit of Arkansas. I was born in Arkansas, so I could do an Arkansas. Right. So, let me try to put my Arkansas face on. Sir, are you saying, is it what you're trying to say that all them people that thought eugenics was real, they was not immoral, they was just wrong about science and stuff? Because they didn't know enough about science and things? I'm not so sure about that statement objectively, sir. Think that might just be your opinion, man. Okay, that wasn't as good as I could. I'll get it right next time. I've been practicing.
Have enough knowledge. So there's no difference in morality. If there's an objective morality, just like if there's an objective fact of gravity, everybody in the past was just didn't have the knowledge to get it right, which would make a lot of sense. Like it wouldn't make much sense to say they actually knew what they were talking about in the past or that had any idea what objective morality would be.
That was not so long ago. That was, historically speaking, that was just yesterday almost.
Oh, sorry. Mike was unmuted for that.
Yeah,
I'm not
keep making
not
progress
necessarily
with things, so.
disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that wasn't like that long ago. You know, we're not talking about the Middle Ages here. We're talking about the 20th century.
No, I mean, objectively speaking, the Middle Ages wasn't even that long ago. If you're talking about the span of human history, the existence of the fucking Earth, right? I mean, so what are we measuring by? We could start with where philosophy begins and go from there, because they were talking about philosophy a few thousand years ago, and we're still talking about it, right? Well, philosophy, specifically moral philosophy, right? Start with Aristotle. I think Aristotle is one of the earliest. Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying, though.
That doesn't really matter. Like we've made progress. Like the scientists 30 years ago were wrong about things we've discovered since then. So
right. So
it's not really a big leap.
Yeah, it's not really an argument at all.
You think we made a lot of progress since the 20th century in terms of morality?
In terms of knowledge.
I think that I have made progress in my theory since then.
Well, yeah, because you're alive, Tom.
That's
incorrect. Oh God,
yes.
This is fucking ridiculous. All right,
okay.
2 more minutes. Literally 2 more minutes. I'm not even
gonna make more
stop the
progress
video
because you're talking about things. It seems to me, like from what I'm understanding, as if we're right now we're at the cusp, right? We're more evolved than we ever were before.
It's true every day of the fucking week, bro.
Looking into the future, though, like according to your model, just to have an idea, is this are we pretty much at the end of the line, or do you think there are some?
Does this guy not understand? There is no end of the line. It keeps going until it just stops. Like there's no fucking pinnacle of human evolution. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand at all.
Yeah, we're nowhere near the full realization. We're at the very beginning.
What are you talking about? Morality, or why are you acknowledging his statement just now?
We're still just waking up, essentially. So yeah, there's a lot of progress still that we need to make, and we're nowhere near it. What the standard would be yet? It's not even close. So a few things that my model is going to predict is that veganism is going to be correct. Vegetarianism, it's immoral to kill animals. And once we have the resources to do so, it's essentially just going to be outlawed, killing animals.
It's a totally separate argument you got there that you can't fucking account for in your model.
Just to feed humanity without the need of killing animals or any conscious thing, then it will be illegal to kill animals or any other conscious thing.
I can't see where Tom can account for that in his model. But he also just kind of generalized things like and specify whether he's talking about humans, non-human animals. Again, does this apply to plants and trees? If so, how does veganism work? Do we have to grow soy, whatever, whatever we have to make that's that's what I'm looking for, an inorganic or at least synthesized organic material that we can responsibly consume without ever having to kill anything, right? Because we can't eat anything that wasn't at one point alive, and eating dead things isn't healthy, and maybe fish, maybe bugs, they don't have enough. I don't see how that all works out at the end of the day. All right, time to do this thing. As I said, I have the paper we're reading up earlier, and it cut off like about 10 minutes back, but I think we had a couple interruptions. So I'm gonna hope we did not get to excellence, and I had a lot of things to say about excellence, and we left off in the characteristics of good, bad, right, wrong, happiness, and pleasure is where we did leave off. And I think I had a lot of things to say in this section and the next section, so we'll restate them now after having our minds reinvigorated by T-Jump and Bruno, whom I disagree with both at this particular point in the conversation. I mean, I agree with both on some level, but I disagree with both on some level is what I should say. We have disagreements, sir. We have a moral conflict.
Conflict of morality?
I'm about 34 chapters into a Clive Cussler novel now. A novel by Clive Cussler, which is also kind of older. I think it was gifted to me by my cousin. I thought Clive Cussler was an author of Westerns. Well, maybe he is. Or maybe I have him confused with someone else. But this is well, they call it an adventure. But it's kind of a romance / international espionage action thriller type of thing. But it has several moral dilemmas embedded in the plot, which I always find fascinating. So, how can you not be fascinated by that? Okay, if you can see the paper, it's still blown up. As big as it can go without going off screen, I believe. Nope, we can go to 150. Okay, we'll do that. A little easier to see. Okay. Characteristics of good, bad, right, wrong, happiness, or pleasure. It seems to be an empirical fact. Whatever human beings consider to be good involves happiness and pleasure in some way, and whatever they consider to be bad involves unhappiness and pain in some way. This view of what is good has traditionally been called hedonism, as long as the widest range of interpretation is given to these words, from simple sensual pleasures to intellectual or spiritual pleasures, and from sensual pain to deep emotional unhappiness. Let's recall that last statement. From simple sensual pleasures, i.e. sex, to intellectual or spiritual pleasures, i.e. the pleasure in research or spiritual, whatever you call that, spirituality. I don't know, maybe we're talking about prayer, maybe we're talking about reading the Bible, which is also just research, but okay. And from a sensual pain, what the fuck is a sensual pain? Just a sensation pain? Like that occurs when you slam your finger in a door or something? To deep emotional unhappiness. Well, yeah, that's what he meant. Okay. Deep emotional unhappiness. Well, I'm just fucking depressed. It doesn't really matter why. Maybe my whole family died. Maybe my wife cheated on me. Maybe everything's fine and I don't know why I'm depressed. Okay. As long as the widest range of interpretation is given to these words, it is difficult to deny that whatever is good involves at least some pleasure or happiness, and whatever is bad involves some pain or unhappiness. I think I was talking about the harm principle earlier, which have been full-length videos on the past. And this is that if we're deriving what is wrong, what is bad for us from that which makes us unhappy or not sensually pleased, right? It gives us discomfort. Maybe it brings us pain. And that's bad. That's wrong. What if it ends our lives instantly? If it ends our lives instantaneously, doesn't matter whether we consent or not, gunshot to the back of the head, End your life instantaneously. You didn't even know it was coming. You had no time to contemplate it. It just happens to you. Is that moral or immoral? Right? And then you're going to say, well, it's going to cause other people who know you unhappiness. Okay. What if nobody knows you? Or the people that do know you pretty much dislike you? You were just a miserable person your whole life. And nobody really cares whether or not you're gone. I know it's a sad picture to you, subjectively in your human sense, but can you call it moral or immoral objectively to kill that person who has no real interpersonal connections, nobody who's going to miss them? Maybe people who assume they were dead already. Maybe they were a drug addict. We'll keep going there. I think that's a reoccurring theme in my life as somebody who suffered from addiction, and the way certain people treat addicts and the way society treats addicts on a whole. I think we're getting better about it, but I think it's a huge moral divide there. Okay, we'll get back into the text. I could go off on a whole tangent on that, and I didn't do that earlier, I promise. Okay. One element involved in the achievement of happiness is the necessity. I'm getting tongue-tied. Must be because I'm tired. It's 12:30. So I will be going to bed soon. One element involved in the achievement of happiness is the necessity of taking the long range rather than the short range view. Now, this is just your opinion, bro. The guy who wrote this, his name's, I keep forgetting to, Harman. And this is not the original. This is a symposium that another guy wrote. Once again, it's a peer review. Okay. I won't be able to get the guy's name is Harman. I can't remember his first name off the top of my head. But this is he's written a lot of books. Harman, Harman. Okay. So Harman is giving his view, or at least one view, from this perspective that one element involved in the achievement of happiness is the necessity of taking the long range rather than the short range view. I made the analogy to working out for big muscles and lean bodies, and then he makes the analogy to getting your teeth drilled in order to keep our teeth and gums healthy so that we may enjoy eating in general good health. I think it's also a good analogy. But again, I think this is written in the late 70s, and we have even better methods of preventing pain during those procedures now. So you can't even say that. For me, I just didn't even want to sit in a dentist chair when I was a kid. It didn't even matter whether it was painful or not. It was just taking time out of my day that I felt was unnecessary. Now, that was a short-term emotional state, right? I knew that my teeth would eventually rot and fall out. I just counted, I hedged my bets on the hypothesis that I would attain the wealth at a reasonable age to just have my real teeth replaced with some kind of, dentures or implants or something, which is yet to happen. I'm going to need them soon, though. Hey, right? Long term, right? So one element in the achievement of happiness, does it make me unhappy? Well, yeah, sure. It causes me discomfort. Does it make me generally unhappy? Well, no. I mean, it's a thing that happened. When I put it in perspective, I'm like, well, maybe my life would have been a bit better if I'd taken better care of my teeth, but it's not like my overall well-being. Physical exercise too. I mean, I feel better when I exercise, but the drive to be more muscular is kind of secondary to my overall happiness and well-being. I think if if I maintain my mental health, my physical health, and the state of my affairs, and such that I could have a place to rest and a place to work, and then I can maintain that balance, then I would probably just find the mental fortitude to go and work out to make myself more physically fit. I don't know. Let's see whether or not. But I also talked about Travis Pangborn's pleasure drive, which is another interesting theory, that it's all about the pleasure, in essence, and that we seek pleasure and avoid pain. Okay, I do remember hearing myself on playback talking about this, so that's on the last episode. You can go hear the drug diversion story or whatever if you're interested. Similarly, people may do very difficult and even painful work for 2 days in order to earn money that will bring them pleasure and happiness for a week or two. And I didn't critique this earlier, but I wanted to. That's like a capitalist argument, right? It's necessary for them to do the work in order to sustain themselves. The fact that they're doing difficult and painful work maybe implies that either A, it's easier for them to get that job as opposed to one that's more intellectually demanding, that they don't have the qualifications for, or B, they might be making more money doing this job than, say, flipping burgers, right? So they're going to go to, hard construction work because they can make twice as much with the same experience than they would at a McDonald's. That's not really a moral choice. I mean, it does have to do with the effects of society on our decision making, and it is a moral choice, I'd say, if in regards to happiness and to your personal well-being, to your individual well-being, that if you choose to go do a construction job and it makes you miserable, it would be preferable to do the lower paying burger flipping job if it didn't make you miserable. Let's say you weren't even happy there, but it didn't make you miserable. Then the burger flipping job is preferable, unless your quality of life is so your quality of life is increased. I don't know why I keep having such a problem with that word tonight, whatever day it is. If it increases your quality of life to an extent that it is worth the effort, right? And is that your decision as a moral actor, or is that your employer's decision as the one pulling the strings, or both? A little bit of both? Okay. Continue. Furthermore, the term good should be defined in the context of human experience and human relationships rather than in an abstract sense only. I think I just said that. For example, knowledge and power in themselves are not good unless a human being derives some satisfaction from them, or unless they contribute in some way to moral and meaningful human relationships. They are otherwise non-moral. Excuse me, I thought I saw my mic. I thought my mic was muted for a minute, but thankfully it is not, because that would have been a lot of talking for nothing. A hell of a lot of talking for nothing. It would have been worse than the time I got kicked out of my own room earlier. All right. And I stated this earlier. I think when he says non-moral, he means amoral. Same thing, right? They are neither morally positive nor negative. So right, when we're talking about morality, we talk about the relationships between humans, and this is another problem when T-Jump talks about objective morality and how you can apply it to animals. And if you say that you can cause suffering to animals, therefore you ought not to cause suffering to animals, some other person might say to you, well, what if I can end the life of the animal for food sustenance without pain or suffering? Then how is it immoral? And T-Jump will say, well, you've now imposed your will. True. And now the other person might say, well, what if it were the case that if I had not imposed my will upon that animal, that I myself would have perished? And T-Jump's going to say, well, that's subjective. Okay, so objectively, I should allow myself to die before harming the animal. No? Or what? I don't know. I don't have a proper answer to that question. That's why I'm reading this shit. But, I still have to ask the questions to obtain better philosophy. So, is it an amoral question? Self-preservation moral. Is self-preservation moral? I don't know. Continue. What about actions that will bring a person some good but will cause pain to another, such as those acts of a sadist who gains pleasure from violently mistreating another human being? Our original statement was that everything that is good will bring some person satisfaction, pleasure, or happiness of some kind. But this statement does not necessarily work in the reverse, that everything that brings someone satisfaction is necessarily good. There certainly are malicious pleasures. True enough. Some people just kill animals for sport. Excellence. Okay, this is where we're going to have fun. Excellence. William Frankana states that whatever is good will also probably involve some kind or degree of excellence. He goes on to say that what is bad in itself is so because of the presence of either pain or unhappiness, or of some kind of defect or lack of excellence. And we've found that a lack of excellence is synonymous to a thing being mediocre. We're going to call this thing mediocre. Whenever this person says lack of excellence, we will say mediocre, because a lack of excellence is not a quality, and we need to have a quality that is going to be synonymous with immorality. And a lack of excellence is not a quality, it's a lack of a quality. Excellence is an important addition to pleasure or satisfaction in that it makes experience or activities better or worse than they would otherwise be. For example, the enjoyment or satisfaction gained from hearing a concert, seeing a fine movie, or reading a good book is due to great extent to the excellence of the creators and presenters of these events, i.e., composers, performers, directors, actors, and writers. Right, and as I stated earlier, this is just a subjective judgment about the quality of these people and in their performance. It doesn't say anything about them as people, and we're going to go on to this in the next segment, I remember. But when you're calling something excellent or not excellent or mediocre, right? We're talking about them as people, their actions, right? And now you're talking about their talents, things that they do. Composers, performers, directors, actors, and writers. These are technically their careers. They could be hobbies, but ideally, we're talking about people who do this as a career. If you enjoy the way this person performs their duty, right? That does not make them as a person excellent. It doesn't make a moral statement about them at all. Doing your duty well is not moral. That's just a thing that is either done or not done, right? Your moral decisions come from the way you treat people in your right. It doesn't come from the things you do. That doesn't make sense to me. Okay, we'll just continue on. I went a little bit farther off of it. Okay, excellence of the creators and presenters of these events, right? No, they did excellently in presenting or creating the event. That doesn't make them excellent. That makes them great at what they do. But when you're talking about excellence, excellent means superior. It's top shelf. It is the pinnacle, as we were talking about when I said pinnacle with T-Jump earlier. That is what is meant by moral excellence, or excellence in general. Another and perhaps more profound example of the importance of excellence is that if one gains satisfaction or pleasure from witnessing a well-conducted court case and from seeing and hearing the judge and the lawyers perform their duties well, that satisfaction will be deepened if the judge and the lawyers are also excellent people. That is, if they are kind, fair, and compassionate human beings, in addition to being clever and able. Again, a subjective experience, your judgment of these people being kind, fair, and compassionate human beings, in addition to being clever and able. Being clever and able is just their job, right? A well-conducted court case, if you derive pleasure from witnessing the well-conducted court case, and additionally from hearing the judge and the lawyers perform their duties well, those are the same thing, right? You could say the judge could make the case well conducted regardless of whether the lawyers were doing their duties well, but that really, you're talking about witnessing the act. What about the person doing the act, right? Because you're saying your satisfaction as a witness will be deepened if the judge and lawyers are also excellent people. Well, again, them doing their jobs well does not imply they're excellent people. Now you're going to say that is if they are kind, fair, and compassionate human beings. What in the one scenario, right? You would actually have to know how these people behave in their personal lives to know if they were excellent people. Judging them by witnessing a singular court case doesn't actually give you a good judge of a person's overall character. They might have just had an exceptionally good day. Maybe it was even excellent. But that doesn't mean that they are they display these qualities on a daily basis as human beings. You don't have the prerequisite knowledge to make that judgment. This is a merely subjective statement. Whatever is good then will probably contain some pleasure, happiness, and excellence, whereas whatever is bad will be characterized by their opposites, pain, unhappiness, and mediocrity. The above claims only indicate that there will probably be some of these elements present. For example, a good person performing a right action might not be particularly happy and might even find what he or she is doing painful. Nonetheless, the recipients of the right action might be made happy by it, and the right action might also involve excellence. I'm going to mute for a moment and take a quick commercial break.
This is one powerful video. Your voice is scaring the demons. Your voice is destroying the demons.
Keep it real, homies.
Lockdown Records presents a Hip Hop Christmas. You'll get such classics as These Nuts Roasted on an Open Fire, A Sleigh Ride in My 64, Annie Up Bitch, It's Christmas, and many more.
buy that
You can't
shit,
get this
son.
2 CD set.
Excuse me. Oh, goodness. I need to find my other headphones. I buried them in the car. I'm wearing the old ones that are very loosely taped together. So I had a bit to say about this party here at, earlier. A good person performing a right action might not be particularly happy. It might even, okay, so the good person performing the right action to please or make happy the other person with excellence, right? There's a lot of nuance kept out of this, like whether or not that good person performing the right action was doing so out of their own volition, out of their own free will, or whether they were being forced or coerced or manipulated into doing the right action, right? They could do it excellently. They could please the other person and make them happy. But is it right for them? That's the individual, right? And that's why you have an individual morality as well. Is it right for you? Will you sacrifice of yourself for another? Is that moral? Harmony and creativity. How long does this go? I'm on page 4 now. Okay, we'll go to amoral next. We'll go up to amoral and then cover that on the next one. Probably tomorrow. Harmony and creativity. There are two other attributes of good and right that may add to our definition. They are harmony and creativity on the good side, and discord or disharmony and lack of creativity on the bad side. Okay, you're just going with contradictory terms now, but I gotta see where you're going. If an action is creative, or can aid human beings in becoming creative and at the same time help to bring about a harmonious integration of as many human beings as possible, then we can say it is a right action. If an action has the opposite effect, then we can say that it is a wrong action. For example, a person or a group of people can end a war between two nations and create an honorable and lasting peace, then a right or good action has been performed. It can allow members of both nations to be creative rather than destructive and can create harmony between both sides and within each nation. On the other hand, causing or starting a war between two nations will have just the opposite effect. Lester A. Kirkendall stresses these points and also adds to the earlier discussions about the necessity of placing primary emphasis on what is good or excellent in human experience and relationships. Whenever a decision or choice is to be made concerning behavior, I assume this is a quote, the moral decision will be the one which works towards the creation of trust, confidence, and integrity in relationships. It should increase the capacity of individuals to cooperate and enhance the sense of self-respect in the individual. Acts which create distrust, suspicion, and misunderstanding, which build barriers and destroy integrity, are immoral. They decrease the individual's sense of self-respect. There's the antonym of the word I kept looking for earlier. And rather than producing a capacity to work together, they separate people and break down the capacity for communication. Two other terms that we should define are amoral and non-moral. Oh, we're going to distinct these. Amoral has no moral sense. Non-moral, the word non-moral, means out of the realm of morality altogether. I don't see how these are quite distinct. Indifferent to right or wrong, or out of the realm of morality. Okay, we'll read about that tomorrow, because I gotta go to bed.
Well, look, we're dealing with a lot of weird people on the internet here.
Hey, what can I say? I'm one of them. I guess I'll announce the show on the 30th is going to be a PM. That'll be an open room. It's the week after next because I have my test in the morning. I can't say exactly what time we'll be back yet. I'll figure that out and probably announce it on Monday. But it will be in the afternoon for sure. Sunday, I've got no guest. If you want to come by on Sunday, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be reaching out my tentacles tomorrow. It's generally we just plan to do a 1-to-1 and just chat. I don't really need a. We're already gonna have a drama-free open room on Monday. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, and do all your superstitious bullshit. Otherwise, I'm just gonna boot people. It'll be great. I'm usually very, very reserved about booting people from my streams and chats, but I've got to be strict on this one. I swear it. Hold me to it, someone. Right. Saturday, I'll be on Patreon. I'm going to dox myself. No, I'm already doxing myself. SimChimp's supposed to be my new sock account. How can you have a sock account if you expose yourself on a fucking stream? Look, it's only 15 of you know about stupid monkey philosophy. I don't think you could go around spouting your mouths off about it, but it's not like anybody can't find it. It's not a fucking secret, right? And then I'm doing Mobile Marmoset YouTube Patrol. It's just kind of me surfing the internet and posting random bullshit. It's nothing too serious, but we will critique some of it in the future. Once I have enough compiled, we're going to go back and critique all this bullshit I find. And I just find it to be interesting, good fun, good-natured people watching, and observation of humans are fucking fascinating creatures, man. You know, they're really something else. And so are you. Try to be kind, be well, stay trusty. We all do stupid things, but you know, Dr. Phil's patented definition of insanity is when you keep doing stupid shit over and over again and then you don't get different results, but then you keep doing the stupid shit. You know what? Larry has a slightly higher voice, I think. Well, that's not it, is it? I don't know. Somebody tell me if I'm getting this wrong. I know I am. I used to do country bumpkin voice all the time. We used to do skits when I was younger, but we don't do that no more. Somebody come make a skit with. All right, stupid monkey, fucking out. Fucking out. Happy Friday, y'all. Bye bye.